The year is 1863. The place is Sicily, just outside Palermo. Moonlight falls over rows of lemon trees, heavy with fruit. Between the branches, armed men wait in silence. They aren't thieves, they're guards. Sicily's lemon groves had just become some of the most valuable farmland on Earth. The British Navy needed citrus to fight scurvy, and it needed enormous amounts of it. Prices soared. Theft became a constant threat. Landowners couldn't trust the new Italian state to protect their crops. Sicily had only just been folded into a unified Italy. Police were thin, courts were slow, trust was thinner still. So estate managers hired their own men instead. It was meant to be a simple arrangement: muscle for hire to guard fruit. Instead, it became something else entirely. This small system of private protection eventually grew into the modern Mafia, a network that would one day reach banks, elections, and even the United States. So how did guarding lemon trees turn into one of history's most enduring criminal organizations? Let's trace it, one problem at a time, from a citrus grove to a global underworld. The first problem was simple. Landowners needed protection, but the state couldn't provide it. Sicily in the 1860s was chaotic, newly unified, poorly governed, and deeply distrustful of Rome. Many Sicilians saw the new Italian government as a foreign occupier, not a liberator. So local strongmen filled the gap instead. These men were called gabelloti. They managed estates on behalf of absentee landowners. Some gabelloti were honest managers. Others realized they held real leverage. If they controlled the guards, they controlled the harvest. If they controlled the harvest, they controlled the money. That leverage created a second problem. Power without oversight tends to multiply. Gabelloti began charging landowners for protection from threats the gabelloti themselves quietly arranged. It was a simple, brutal loop. Manufacture the danger, sell the safety. By the 1870s, this practice had a name: the onorata società, the honored society. Members called themselves uomini d'onore, men of honor. The label was a performance. It masked extortion as tradition. The next real breakthrough came when this local racket needed structure. A scattered collection of thugs is fragile. Rivals fight, loyalty shifts, business suffers. So the emerging mafia borrowed something old: initiation rituals. Recruits swore oaths, often over a burning saint's card, pledging silence and obedience. This oath had a name, too: omertà. Roughly, it meant a code of silence. Omertà solved a specific problem. It made betrayal costly, even psychologically. Informants weren't just breaking a rule, they were breaking a sacred bond. This is the same irony planted at the start. Men hired to guard fruit had built a shadow government. By 1876, Italian officials investigating Sicily were startled by what they found. Entire towns operated under mafia authority, not state authority. Taxes, disputes, even marriages sometimes ran through local bosses instead of courts. The fork in the road appeared here. Two paths opened at once. One path was rural: agricultural extortion, land control, and local political influence. The other path was urban, infiltrating Palermo's markets, ports, and construction trades. Both paths shared the same core method: control the choke point, charge a toll, punish refusal. That method scaled, and scaling created the next problem entirely. Scaling meant more members, more territory, and more chances for conflict. Local mafia clans, called cosche, began competing over the same turf. Without central coordination, disputes turned violent fast. So bosses developed loose councils to mediate territory and settle disputes. This wasn't one organization yet. It was more like a franchise system, held together by shared codes. Each cosche stayed independent, but omertà and ritual kept them speaking the same language. That structure proved dangerously exportable.
Between 1880 and 1924, roughly 1.3 million Sicilians emigrated. Many headed for the United States. Most were ordinary people fleeing poverty. A small number brought Mafia methods with them. In cities like New York and New Orleans, immigrant communities faced the same gaps Sicily once had. Police were unfamiliar, language barriers were steep, trust in official law was low. The old solution reappeared: private protection, sold to people who felt unprotected. This created the next problem: rivalry with existing American criminal networks. Sicilian arrivals sometimes clashed with earlier Italian gangs and other ethnic crime networks already operating in the same cities. Conflict forced adaptation. Groups that survived learned to negotiate, not just fight. Meanwhile, back in Sicily, fascism created a very different pressure. In 1925, Benito Mussolini appointed Cesare Mori, a police official, to crush the Mafia entirely. Mori's campaign was brutal. Mass arrests, show trials, entire villages placed under siege-like control. For a moment, the strategy worked. Mafia activity in Sicily dropped sharply through the late 1920s. But suppression created displacement, not disappearance. Many Mafia-connected men fled abroad, some straight into the American networks already forming. Fascist Italy had accidentally exported the very problem it tried to erase. The Lemon Grove's private guards, decades later, had become an international phenomenon. By the 1930s, American authorities were tracking a very different kind of organization: national, adaptable, and disturbingly well-run. The final structural problem was leadership itself. Too many independent bosses meant too many potential wars. In 1931, that tension exploded into open conflict in New York, a brief, bloody struggle later called the Castellammarese War. When it ended, a mobster named Charles Lucky Luciano proposed something new. Instead of one supreme boss, he suggested a commission, a council of equals from different families. The idea borrowed directly from Sicily's old cosche system, just organized at national scale. This commission divided New York into 5 families and linked crime groups across other major cities. Disputes now went to arbitration first, violence second. It wasn't peace. It was managed conflict, which was enough to keep business running.
That business had also transformed. Prohibition, from 1920 to 1933, had handed organized crime an entire economy overnight.
Bootlegging funded fleets, bribes, and legitimate-looking front companies. By the time Prohibition ended, the Mafia wasn't a rural protection racket anymore. It was a corporation with a constitution nobody had ever written down. So what kind of story is this, really? It isn't a story of criminal genius appearing from nowhere. It's a story of gaps. Gaps in government, gaps in trust, gaps in protection. Each gap got filled by someone willing to charge for safety. Picture those armed men again, waiting quietly among the lemon trees. They weren't building an empire, they were just guarding fruit. But every solution created a new problem, and every problem demanded a new layer of power. Fruit guards became family bosses. Family bosses became a commission. One truth held from the very first grove to the last: power fills whatever gap you leave open.